So good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for dialing into the NCBA Consumer Banking webinar. My name is Rosalind Gishuru. I am the Group Director for Marketing, Communications and Citizenship here at NCBA Group, and I will be your MC this morning. Today's conversation is dubbed Personal Finance Management in the Time of Corona. We have an exciting morning planned for you, but before I get into the agenda for the morning, allow me to acknowledge all our customers who have dialed in this morning, and as well the group directors of NCBA who are present and joined into this call. Welcome. So our agenda is quite simple. We will begin with our Group Managing Director, Mr. John Gashora, who will open this meeting up with his remarks. He will then be followed thereafter by the NCBA Chief Economist, who We will then have our keynote speaker, who we are very excited to be hosting this morning, Patricia Kiwanuka, who will give her remarks, and thereafter, we have a very robust panel discussion planned. The panel will be moderated by our Director Consumer Banking, Gladys Akini, and on the panel, we have Washeke Ndwati, founder of Centonomy. Washeke is no stranger to us. We have had her on one of our earlier panels this year, and we're happy to have her back. We will also have Kadura Nyamu, who is the Managing Director for NCBA Investment Bank. And lastly, the sole gentleman on the panel will be our group. In terms of housekeeping, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A tab that is available. There will be a chance for us to have Q&A, so keep your questions coming and they will be taken at the time of the panel discussion. And if you would also like to make a comment about a personal finance management. So with those few opening remarks, allow me at this point to invite our Group Managing Director, Mr. John Gashora, to share his remarks. Welcome, John.
And good morning, everybody. I hope that you're keeping well and you're keeping safe during this time. I think we have used the word unprecedented so many times, but let me use it again to say these are unprecedented times. But I do hope that you and your families are keeping safe. Thank you for joining us today. I'm joining this discussion getting COVID-19, personal finance management in the time of Corona. The COVID-19 pandemic has inflicted unprecedented health and economic challenges worldwide. Its duration is still highly uncertain, especially given the pressing direction that it's taking. I think you have seen the issues that the United States is going through. The United States is going through. Can you all hear me? Some people are saying they cannot hear me. Rosalind, can you hear me?
I would ask
Okay. I'll say and health and economic challenges. And its duration is highly uncertain. Besides playing a critical role to our customers and employees, we continue to play a pivotal role in stabilizing the financial system. We continue to support lending, provide critical infrastructure for the national payment system, and facilitate trade. And liquidity in the real economy. To be sure, it is important for us banks to continue providing these services in order to minimize the adverse impacts of this pandemic on lives and livelihoods. As NCBA, we have a robust pandemic response plan that ensured the continuity of our operations, safety and well-being of our staff, our customers, and the broader community in all the markets we operate in. As the government tries to mitigate the financial impact of the pandemic, we too are playing our part. Some of the measures that we have taken to cushion our customers during this uncertain period include strictly implementing all recommended measures to protect the health and welfare of our staff and customers visiting branches. We have continued to encourage our customers to use alternative banking channels and other options such as online banking and ATMs, agencies, and our mobile apps. We have also waived, as you're aware, fees on mobile money transfer and PESA-linked cashless transactions to discourage the handling of cash, which is widely understood to be a high transmission risk for this virus. We are cognizant of the impact that this pandemic has caused to personal lives, businesses, and economy as a whole. Many of our customers, whether individuals or businesses, continue to face numerous urgent financial and operational needs, as have restructured over 50 billion worth of customer loans, absorbing all associated bank restructuring charges. Our loan restructuring efforts have included the extension of loan repayment periods by up to 12 months. This has the effect of reducing payment installments, giving repayment holidays for 3 to 6 months, moratoriums on both principal and interest in some cases, waiver on all late payments as well on our digital lending channels, M-Shwari. We remain steadfast in our commitment to support our customers to weather this challenge. The COVID pandemic has resulted in a fundamental shift in customer behavior, as witnessed by the decrease in visits to branches, with an immediate increase in online transactions, peer-to-peer payments, digital wallets, among others. This crisis will likely accelerate many existing trends, like the shift to digital products and solutions, and the faster adoption of e-commerce. Consumers are increasingly taking a more cautious approach to credit management. We have recorded reduced credit card spend across asset purchases such as automobiles, leading to significant household deleveraging. We have also recorded an increase in card usage in certain sectors, especially in retail sector, around groceries, shopping, pharmaceuticals, etc., as these are essentials that most consumers have focused on for the last few months. The crisis will undoubtedly have a lasting impact on how consumers secure their future and save. The persistent effects of volatility in capital markets will drive some customers to favor products, investment products such as high interest savings account, money market funds, and government bonds. With a large share of small businesses unfortunately closing doors due to the pandemic and perhaps never reopening, there will be some reluctance to even open new businesses or pursue entrepreneurial ventures, at least in the short term. At NCBA, we are persuaded that the appropriate response to this shift is to focus on more prioritizing cash flows through the pandemic, tactically considering long-term savings as well as insurance for any probable risks. Given these difficult times, we are mindful that all our customers would benefit from continued support in the form of financial advisory, financial conversation in short term and long term, conversations about cash flow management and investment, as well as conversations about replanning their future. It is indeed in this regard that we are very delighted to host you today in this conversation on personal financial management in the time of Corona. We are confident that we will gain meaningful insights from our cast of speakers and panelists. I am glad that despite the disruptive nature of this crisis to our ability to convene, technology has still allowed us to interact in very meaningful ways as we steer our financial futures together. These are unprecedented times, and while the extent of this devastation is still evolving, we recognize that no single person or entity is fully equipped to deal with all the possible outcomes. This pandemic will result in lasting social changes, including how consumers select channel preferences, products, and banks for their individual financial need post-COVID-19. There will be a post-COVID-19 delivery. How we respond to this pandemic will have a direct impact on our customers, employees, and the economy at large. We are conscious that our actions today will lay the basis for banking industry's future for years to come. Today, I know we are joined by a lot of our customers. Some are individuals struggling through the crisis, and more importantly, some are business owners. A lot about those families that depend on your businesses for their survival. It is for this reason that I call this a conversation, because all of us share in these worries, share in this destiny. So at this juncture, I'd like to invite our in-house economist, Mr. Raphael Agun, to give us a brief update on the economy, especially as to how it impacts our lives in the weeks ahead. It is my hope that you find today's discussion, conversation beneficial. Thank you for your attention. Raphael.
Thank you, John. Good morning. And thank you too for your leadership at this time of crisis. It is indeed an unprecedented time, as you've said. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you're able to join us today for this conversation on personal finance management in the time of Corona. Our consumer banking team, as John has already alluded to, have put together a distinguished cast of speakers to guide us through some of the household balance sheet choices that we'll have to make through this time of crisis. And we're really pleased that we're looking forward to quite a number of insights. Conversation. Allow me to provide a broad sketch of the macroeconomic context in which some of those allocative balance sheet, household balance sheet decisions will be made. I'll make 3 brief points in order to allow as much time for the conversation that I'm sure you've all woken up very early for. So my first point is, even though the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic is a very negative turn with regard to economic output. At the beginning of the year, if you look at the first strip on the infographic that I've shared with you, when we commenced 2020, our models were expectedly very optimistic. So we were anticipating total output or GDP growth, as it's called in ordinarily, to average 5.7%, which is just shy of optimal output for the Kenyan economy, for those of you who follow that. We've had to obviously factor in the developments coming out of the pandemic. And in our continuous update, we took a base case scenario that was already proving somewhat overly optimistic. As you look at the numbers coming out of the public health crisis, especially yesterday, including the second round effects that we are seeing globally, a very big hit, and the assumption that some meaningful economic activity would return towards the end of the year is beginning to be doubtful. That said, I think the best case scenario gave us an output number of about 0.2%. In a worst case scenario, which presumed a complete freeze, as John has already alluded to, the economy, of course, is on a policy-induced coma, which means because of the measures that are in place, you do not have any meaningful economic activity, particularly on what is characterized as the non-essential side. Now, the worst case scenario, which now seems to be the more realistic outcome, projects a contraction of just minus 2.4%. Indeed, just last week, the IMF released its June 4%. That is 190 basis points worse than their April forecast. The reason for this, of course, remains that the crisis at the public health level is unresolved. Granted that our meaningful effort is ongoing with regard to addressing the vaccine responses to it and related public health support mechanisms, including public health infrastructure. Reality is the new normal somewhat dictates almost by fiat that meaningful production and the productivity thereto is sharply reduced. With that in mind, I guess the obvious import for this conversation, because we're looking at the consumer side of it, is its implication for the labor market outlook. So if you see the second strip, I just wanted to give us a sense of, and that's indeed my second point, the Kenya National Bureau of Standards has, for the first time, given us a sense of the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on households. The survey was done around April, so it's slightly dated given the pace at which we are seeing the changes going. But that, even then, we have meaningful sight of some of the ramifications of the crisis. The crisis is particularly pungent on labor outlook, and this is indeed true even on global numbers. So if you look, for instance, at the when you're waiting for the May employment report out of the US shortly, I think if you look at the April number, there was a sharp recovery there. But the idea is that if you have to keep people out of work, and if you see on the extreme end of that strip, you are having about up to 50% of the labor force. Our labor force is about 17, 18 million people, and you are having about 50% of them having to stay away from work because of lockdown. The impact of the same is obvious to all. So obviously it contributes to that consumption reduction that fed onto the GDP number that I outlined. But most significantly, the related impact survey that the KNBS have done has now given us a sense of the pungent feel of this onto households. So for instance, about 30.5% of households are unable to pay their rent. Now, pause for a moment for that. About 30%, meaning a third, not more, of our households are unable to service their rental obligations. If you take the ricochet effect of that, it has implications for rental income, for those who own property. It has implications for related to transport, related to food. And so even as we get into the conversation around personal finance management, it's important that we appreciate that given the size and level of development of our economy broadly, the side is particularly very poignant in sort of giving action the kind of allocative decisions that we'd have to make at the balance sheet level as households. Now, I think in a nutshell, and as I close, because it's important that we get into deeper conversation with our distinguished cast, as the group managing director has alluded to, I think a snapshot of it is of the need to respond to the crisis. We've had traditional macroeconomic responses coming out of the sovereign, and those responses, if you will, dichotomize into two, both on the fiscal side and the monetary policy side. These macroeconomic policy responses will define the framework, or indeed the context, as I said, in which some of the insights or some of the ideas that Ms. Washeke and Patricia will be taking us through will be taken. So for instance, in a nutshell, they will direct what is in ordinary language referred to as the price of money, i.e. the interest rates. And so to give you some color on that, it's pretty obvious that you've been following from the budget, and indeed before then, His Excellency the President outlined an 8-point economic stimulus package, notable of which for this conversation, of course, remains the idea of trying to shore up disposable income, and the way the strategy behind has been to reduce the income tax rate at the corporate level, but also at the personal level by about 5%. Cumulatively, the sovereign has forgone about 172 billion worth of money, which I believe, or we believe now, are sitting in pockets in terms of disposable income in order to support the livelihoods because of the challenge that is ensuing. Now, that action alone and the additional aid have been stimulative enough. So if you will, what we are seeing, for instance, is, yes, there is the ravaging destruction in terms of jobs, but overall liquidity support remains robust. And if you hover back to the monetary policy side, you've also had a couple of very bold responses from the central bank. First of which was, of course, to revise the central bank rate, which gives us a signal of the direction of monetary policy. As it were, that direction is now officially accommodative. The good news just coming 2 days ago is on the inflation front, again, we are seeing some gains there. So inflation dropped to just 4.6%, meaning that there's more opportunity for even a further accommodative stance. But the second point from the central bank, of course, was the revision of our cash reserve ratio, which, if you will, is normally a tax on bank deposits, sort of impeding the disintermediation efforts that we have to undertake, and which reduction has further pumped in north of 35 billion shillings into the economy. So cumulatively, the actions both on the fiscal and the monetary policy front have ensured that in the immediate term and middle term, we are having significant liquidity support. As the group managing director already alluded to earlier, the only positive thing about this crisis, has been that the banking system has gone into this crisis with significant buffers, both at the capital level, but also sheerly on the liquidity front. So average liquidity well north of 48, 50% thereabout. That then being the case, of course, if you look at the Q1 GDP numbers, and we got that released just a day or two ago, we contracted by 4.9%, but the key data point that I want to flag for you from that report is the savings rate. And that is, of course, consequential to what Washeke and team will be taking us through. So average savings rates for the country in the Q1 has been just about 4.15%. With the kind of liquidity context that I'm trying to underscore, it's obvious that from the short end of the yield curve, we expect that rates will remain depressed in the short term. However, just given, and that leads me to the other slide on my right, rather on the infographic, because of the fiscal measures that have been taken in the budget to respond to the public health crisis, there's an appreciation that the switch from foreign borrowing into domestic borrowing has implications for that yield environment. And so potentially, as we move into the deeper terrains of this fiscal year, which only began yesterday, it's pretty obvious that there will be pressure on interest rates. So even as we listen through and converse around the personal financial management strategies that we can adopt at the balance sheet, at household balance sheet level, it's pretty obvious that the macroeconomic context will be characterized by two things. I think there'll be the challenge of maintaining the unprecedented levels of stability we've seen even in the crisis, but also going back 2-3 years, thanks to central, and of course trying to see how the price of money, what matters, or including the currency, which by the way has been very durable for the most part, if you will. The current dynamic that I'm talking about in that infographic suggests that the currency will remain stable as well. So yes, as we make this decision, and as it's pretty obvious, central to policy goals, the price of money will have that sort of two-faced dichotomy that I outlined. In the short term, you have very, very depressed savings rates in the outlook, and then medium to long term, because of the imperatives of the government's priority and the budget as sketched out to us a couple of weeks ago, suggests that there will be pressure on that, and that has implications for how we approach our allocative decisions at the household level. So without taking too much time, I'll stay on for the call, for the remainder of the call. We'll be happy to take all your questions. Particularly, I'm very pleased that we have a very able cast that's going to take us through some of the insights on how we have finances to this. So thanks, Rosal.
Okay. So thank you those who are log from our direct.
I think you have lost Rosalind Wasek.
Okay. Hi, are we back on?
Yes, we are, Rosalind.
Okay, so Patricia is our chief. She will be to us. And just before she takes the stage, I just want to introduce her briefly. Patricia Kiwanuka is a managing director of Revenue Stream Limited. She is a behavior finance and psychology expert. She has built her firm on the expertise and experience gained as a chartered financial analyst and overruns and pensions. Patricia was managing director for asset management and property at UAP Old Mutual Group in under management and a property portfolio of 20 billion with operations across the East African region. While with the group, she also held the post of corporate director Old Mutual Life Insurance and sat on a number of boards as a director across the UAP Old Mutual Group. Patricia actively sits on a number of boards, and I think with that introduction, I will allow Patricia to address us. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gashora. Thank you so much for you and the NCBA team for inviting me for this session. I want to talk about where I'm sitting right now, just to get this started after that introduction. So you've heard my name, I'm Patricia, and right now I'm in Embu. I came to check on my mother in March, and I found myself literally living my worst case scenario. This is my COVID experience as I talk to you. I am in Embu, in the room that I was in. I think the last time I've been in this room was probably 16 for more than 2 months. So I feel what some of you who are parents, you have your children at home and adolescents back at home. I feel like an adolescent generally. But what is important about the slide that's up there is whatever happens, life happens, and you will live longer than you plan to. Things that are certain in life is you will end employment and you will die at some point. So really the question I ask myself is, when do I think I'm going to die? When is N? That's my mother who's retired. That's her at 15 years of retirement. I want you to be assured you will stay for longer in retirement. And that's kind of a journey that I want us to work through today about your money. The objective today is really around wealth creation. And when I talk about wealth, I'll talk about the 5 different aspects of it. The first one is your income. Certainly within that, without a doubt, income has been affected by Corona. Second thing I'll talk about is your expenses. And Raphael has alluded to this around how are you changing the way you're managing your money? And finally, your net worth. Are you even familiar about whether you have a net worth or not? One of the comments on Facebook was quite interesting last night, where someone said, why are we discussing money at a time when people don't have it? And that's one of the things that Corona has done, is it's focusing us a lot on the negative side about our money. And we're not taking time to reflect and pause about even the assets that you've acquired over time. We're focusing so much on debt that we are wondering if we've actually done anything right with your money over time. So I want you to look through this and think about your own assets. What have you acquired? What are your liabilities? So for example, when I look at this, I think of anything that gives me an expense as a liability. Now, I've just told you I'm currently in my family home. So question, should I value the house in Nairobi as an asset at this time or not? It's been sitting idle for the last 3 months. Or the car that I have outside, it's parked. Is that really an asset or a liability at this point? Can it give me an income? For the people who are holding assets, and that's a conversation again we'll be having, is rental incomes. People are talking about 30% of people not being able to pay rent. Now, for a pensioner who had invested in rental income, how is this affected? What is the kind of restructuring that they need to do to their balance sheet? So keep this chat in mind as we have the conversation going forward. So very quickly talking about the asset. First one, income. I've only had 2 or 3 from my clients of people who have had an increase in income during this period. And even in that case, it was an increase because of a change in job. Now, the gentleman I spoke to is very clear that despite the change in job, he doesn't want to change his lifestyle, but he wants to put the money aside for saving. Now, most of us, including I'm affected by income. As I set up my business 2.5 years ago, at that point, I never imagined COVID is going to happen. It's the last thing any business owner or entrepreneur was expecting. If you know anything about entrepreneurship, they say it takes you about 3 to 5 years to turn around. They actually call it the valley of death. So I'm right in the center of that valley of death. Now, income is low, job losses are happening, cost cuttings are happening, rents are getting delayed. The worst thing you can do right now is start a new hustle or a new job. If you already had not planned or done research into a new business line. So for example, if you're me and I decide to set up a business now in Embu, it's very likely not to succeed because I haven't done the research I need to in this market. Next problem, Most people want to inject money. This is actually a man problem. You feel if you put more money into your business, if you're more aggressive, that you will earn more. That may not happen. And finally, for those of us in the gig economy, people in Uber, events, photography, you were used to making money based on gigs, based on events. That has definitely contracted, and you have to start making a plan for yourself. The second talk I'll talk about is expenses. You must. So if I use my life again as an example, I've had to reallocate some expenses. Now I don't spend as much on fuel and the car, but look at what has happened. I'm working from home, so I need Wi-Fi, better infrastructure. So your first step is really understanding what your expenses are and starting to reallocate them. I want to speak specifically to families right now. One of my clients, a lady, has teenage sons at home. And as you can imagine, teenagers do eat quite a bit. So your question when I say reallocate expenses means you have to be a bit creative about you do this. So yes, they like eating the sausages and the nice things. However, this is the time when you have to consciously make a decision between balancing. Do I buy the high-end expensive things? Do I keep buying meat in the house, or how do I reallocate? Bulk shopping is something that I've had a lot of people talking to me about. And it's very tempting to do this. I actually did it 3 months before I came here. And guess what? I'm now having to deal with things around inventory and stock. I have to start worrying about emptying my fridge. That was month number 1. Now I'm starting to worry about the pantry. For a lot of people that I've spoken to who have families, you bought in bulk, but you're not managing that stock well. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of wastage in the homes. So just check how you're managing it. And the whole idea of I live today and therefore I don't need to save, COVID might be with us for another 18 months. So you need to make decisions that are long-term in nature. Number 3, your emergency fund. Once you have your income less expenses, hopefully you have some savings. Now, young people especially that I speak to are quite interesting when you talk about an emergency fund. We do recommend that you have 6 to 8 months of your expenses within an emergency fund. You can invest it in something that's liquid, money market, deposits, anything like that, that you can access the circle. Now, we hear things like, I'm too young, I need to make more money, I won't be able to save. But I want to challenge you using money, and is currently upcountry, and she's able to meet her expenses despite being at work. When I'm talking about an emergency fund, you need to be able to answer these questions. Is it unexpected? Is it urgent? And is it necessary before you actually spend? Now, if the roof of your house blows off, all of those will be ticked off. It is unexpected, it is urgent, it is necessary. However, if your car breaks down, if Patricia's car breaks down now, it's very unlikely I can tick off those boxes. So be very careful when you start making the decision of whether to spend or to wait it out. One of my friends actually withdrew money from his circle because he said he was not able to pay rent at the time. What has happened 2 months later? He has got a gig, he has already consumed his money, and it's very unlikely he'll be putting that money back in the circle. So you need to find the right balance on when to access that money. Finally, the last 2, your assets. Please take time to look at what assets you're holding. Ladies, chamas especially, diversifying does not mean buying land in 47 counties. That is still land, it is not liquid. So take a look at your portfolio and pick to an investment advisor and buy different assets. Putting all your retirement money into your home upcountry is not diversification. Please always balance risk and return. The higher the risk you take, the higher the return. So anytime you call me and you say you have a very good deal, it is high return, please remember you're also buying that risk. In this time, the biggest decision I'm finding myself making is a lot of things feel very cheap. People are selling land cheap. Auctioneers are selling things cheap. You have to have a long-term plan. Was it part of your decision long-term to acquire these things? But more importantly, do not sell in a rush. People are having liquidity strain and are selling in a rush. And finally, liabilities. Like I said, anything that doesn't give me an income, I consider a liability. So my car, clearly right now, as I'm thinking about renewal of insurance, I'm really wondering what it's for right now. But I want to talk specifically around debt. Debt, just because you don't talk about it, just because you don't tell your wife about it, just because you ignore it, doesn't mean you've paid it off. Just because NCBA or any other bank is willing to renegotiate with you and extend, interest will still accrue. Second thing, if you're using debt for consumption, then you have a problem. It was very worrying when I heard that credit cards are being used now to do a lot of the shopping at the pharmacy and the groceries. Because what does that mean? You're just postponing the inevitable in that cost-making decision. So you need to be very aware of your debt and you need to aggressively manage it. If you have debt as a business, please take time now to speak to your bankers. It is not enough for you to keep quiet and keep complaining about it. So debt, those are really the 5 concepts in terms of your personal finance that I want to talk about today, and I'll get questions later. So going back to my life, as I said, I'm in Embu right now. An emergency has happened. This is what, if you look at the bottom there, this is the cycle of what you go through anytime from a psychology point of view, anytime you have an emergency. So what happened before March? We got to hear the warning about COVID. We started looking for information. We started seeing all the information around buying of tissue and all the panic that was going on. What happened? Coming closer, there was an impact. Suddenly, there was a conversation around curfew, staying at home. I'm living in Kileleshwa wondering, my goodness, it's quiet at 7. What's going on? Now, then what did I do? I took action. I shopped. I came to check on my mother. I came to stock up. I believe right now I'm really on the honeymoon stage. I'm really at that point where this is beginning to feel normal. In fact, you keep hearing people talking about this as the new normal. We'll do online meetings. But the reality is my finances have been impacted. My business is slower. I'm having to renegotiate. And the same process, when I look even as in friends, even here up country, one of my colleagues was bringing items from China. He has had to rechange his idea and move up his plan to set up a butchery. And that butchery is doing well because he's targeting the same people. So this new normal will have to now evolve into taking stock and inventory. At that point, I really need to start making decisions beyond the band-aid conversations that I've had with my business so far. And finally, at the very end, there'll have to be a recovery. And as you can see there, recovery will happen across all areas. One of the things we emphasize is please have a balanced life. When Mr. Gashora was talking, he talked about both health and economic issues. You need to be very aware that the more unhappy you are, the more anxious you are, the more out of sync you are with your normal life, the more likely you are to make decisions on your finances that are short term. It's very important to think about COVID is going to be just one part in what is a long life for me ahead. So what is my reality really at this point? First thing is you will live longer in retirement. The second one, which is interesting when you're me, is adult children at home will become a key risk. Anyone who's living with adult children over their 20s in their house now, your costs have gone up extraordinarily. And the reason for that is not just the food, but just all the infrastructure around an adult. All the demands, even just on your personal emotions, are a lot higher. Retired husband, for the men who are here, men hate sitting in the house. The women start wondering what to do with you. They almost want you to move out of the house because they want to clean it. So you need to start thinking, how will I manage my time at home when I'm there? Your bucket list, I have a lot of dreams that I want to accomplish. It doesn't matter how much savings I make, it's very unlikely I will fund my bucket list totally. You will have an identity issue. A lot of us are used to going to the office, getting called boss, getting, people at room and calling yourself managing director. Life is very interesting. And finally, fraudsters, they will find you. If I look at the last 3 months, I've already tried to be conned by a tender, an offering a tender that was actually fraudulent. My mother's phone seems to have frauds. I don't know how they know you're at home, but the more anxious you are, the more likely you're the fraudster at that point. Having said that, I believe I'm really at the end, and thank you so much again to them and all of you for joining me. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rosalind.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was an amazing and very insightful presentation. And I just want to encourage everyone to please keep your questions coming through. Use the Q&A tab at this stage. And Patricia is staying on the call, so she will be available to take your questions as we go along. But at this juncture, allow me to introduce to you the moderator of the panel discussion, Gladys Akinyi, our Director for Consumer Banking. Over to you, Gladys. She will run the panel and Q&A session of this webinar. Over to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Rosalind. And thank you all, Patricia, Raphael, and Group Managing Director, for those very insightful observations. Just to put things into perspective, we've heard that COVID may be with us for a long time, that the economy before recovery starts, that new debts will come with significant conditions that may suppress growth, and that there are certainly new opportunities that we need to focus on. We've also heard what people are concerned about right now. As Patricia has pointed out some issues, about right now, and which will is the ability of the businesses to survive. What about the income sustainability, whether you are running your own business or whether you're employed? We are also concerned about how to manage our expenses during a crisis. The safety of our assets. Yeah. We have acquired assets of what Patricia is currently experiencing, lockdown, this social disruption. Yeah, social distancing. Right now, we are all suffering from cabin fever. We cannot wait to be allowed to, go about our businesses. New responsibilities. Yeah, we were parents. Now we are teachers. Yeah, we are providers. We are caregivers. We continue to be. We also are. We are employed, or we have employed people. We are anxious about servicing our debts. And also, we want to know the state of the economy and what opportunities there are right now. Based on that, I would actually like to invite Washeke Ndwati, the CEO and founder of Centonomy, to engage me and engage us in this discussion. Welcome, Washeke.
All right. Thank you so much, Gladys. Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you, John, for having me back again for this webinar. Thank you, Patricia, for the amazing presentation and for laying the foundation so well for this discussion. I don't even know what I need to add to your presentation, but I think I'll just give you some insights about where I am. We first had the first webinar with COVID. I'm one of those people Patricia was talking about. When I heard there's a COVID case in Kenya, I was in the supermarket buying toilet paper, and I do not know why I was buying toilet paper. And I write articles in the paper, and remember my editor telling me, in 2 days, can you write about how people should deal with COVID with their finances? And I was like, whoa. Even me, I need time to absorb what this actually means. But I guess I also believe sometimes when things happen, it is obvious we're in a stage that the cases are rising. When we first had the webinar, we had thought by this time we would have been talking about end of COVID, yeah? So, but now we are in this, and it's not just how to wait for COVID to end. It's while we are in it, what do we do? But also to start questioning on a business level, because for sure, in some form or way, for every one of us, life is not going to be the same. So there's a dance we have to understand what we did wrong in the past. Whenever we've been talking through Centonomy to people about personal finance, the things that we've known, emergency funds, savings, dealing with debt, we had been told those things, yeah? But now we've got to do things differently. And I remember when I started Centonomy, I was at the brokest point in my life. I learned about money because of lunch money, 300 shillings. The day I did not have money at all, yeah, because it's when you don't have money like now, COVID, that we go back and understand, what did I do with yesterday's money? I did calculations, 300 shillings times 30 is 9,000 bob. That was 300 bob I was spending on 8,000 shillings. And when you look at what am I doing every day, little things. And I started this business. Centonomy has now been around for 11 years. So I'm going through COVID, not only as an individual, this business at the time I was most broke. So look at the irony of this. I'm facing my 300 bob situations. I'm trying to get, the ATM is even laughing at me for trying to withdraw money, yeah? And I'm going and teaching people about financial planning. So when crises like this happen, I also ask you, look back on your life and see how you got through the last crisis. Because all of us here, crisis has showed up in some way or form, but many times we forget the lesson. And mine was that the fact I was so scared customers will start asking what folio size. Folio size is the has refused to give it, yeah? That sometimes you have to deal with your situation, deal with the fact that you're looking at your car and you're hoping that E will still get you 2 kilometers down the road to go meet your client, but you have a vision. So we are in this space, yeah, because we've also got to respond to what is the new thing that has to happen, where we do have to manage what is in front of us. We do have to survive, but our heads cannot stay there. Because if we allow our minds just to stay there, we're going to get stuck. We'll keep going round in a circle. So let's talk about what we have to do. But let's also understand that we need to think ahead. Your vision should not have died because of COVID. Your goals may change when you do them, how you do them, but goals should still be part of this. And to be able to do this dance, let's first talk about the reality. The reality is, how do I just handle life? Yeah. And life is my expenses. Before COVID, when we were comfortable, we were earning salaries the way we were earning salaries, our businesses were generating the income. A lot of us were spending without any awareness. Yes, we've always told to do a budget. I don't think anybody listening to this conversation knows that a budget is that they've never had the word budget before. We've always understood that we should do a budget, but we don't do it. And many times people don't do budgets because they think it will restrict them. It will mean lack of enjoyment of life, yeah? But this is what a budget actually is. And if you look at the slide in front of you, I have just categorized expenses into A, B, C, yeah? So take picture of this to do. What is in typical life, your A would be things like food, water, rent, the things you need to survive, yeah? Your B's are, and those are what we call essential expenses. Your B's are important, but you will not die with them. And for be enjoying the use of a car, but if you're honest with yourself in this time, maybe that's not important. A lot of us who are at home are realizing that car has been parked you don't actually need it. Our grooming ourselves, our bees were going to the gym. It's to stretch chilling. So some of your food, milk, bread, may be A, but some of your food is not A. You know, sausages. Yes, we like them, yeah, but they may not be the most essential thing at this time. And then, of course, you've got your C expenses. And these are your subscriptions, you're going out, you're ordering in, and over the work I've done with people, this is where we are addicted. Our CSs, because we get it, I look good at a certain place. And is also an identity reset with our money. We've got to understand sometimes when we are struggling, did we make appearance and image become who we think we are? Because even as I talk to people, it's not just about that I have to make adjustments. It's, oh, what will people think if I can't do this? What will people think if I can't afford this? What will my child think if I can't take them to that school? Even we took a lot of people were taking their kids to very expensive schools. A lot of people were also funding that school via debt. But now when they sit down, when they've gotten time in their houses to evaluate, they were taking kids to that school because it looked good. That is what they were expected to do. So go back and sit with yourself and have a very honest discussion and just leave the noise and say, if it wasn't about what other people think, what is my A, what is my B, what is my C? Ask yourself, if your income has not been affected, maybe you can afford the A, B, C lifestyle. But even if your income has not been affected, you've all had that the cases are rising. For how long can you continue on A plus B plus C sustainably? So even if your income has not been affected and you're still doing everything you were doing before, ask yourself, but what if my income is interrupted? Yeah. So figure out what you need to do for your A. And this is when you talk about savings, what your savings should first do is be able to sort out your A expenses for as long as possible. If you look at the bottom of that slide, if I spend all my money, if I have for example, if I have A plus B plus C is 100,000 shillings, and I spend 100,000 shillings, I'm only giving myself 1 month to survive. But if I say my essentials are 30,000 shillings, if something has happened to my income, it has now given me 3 months to survive. In 3 months, I can log on to the kind of webinars we're having today, the kind of discussions we're having today, learn a new skill, and figure out what is my immediate way of getting income. So even those who have lost, if you've lost your job, don't think about your past salary as what you have to replace. You were earning 200,000 shillings. You are earning 100,000 shillings. Where we go wrong is if another opportunity comes your way, if it's not giving you 100,000 shillings, you don't take the job. Because the way we were living is if I earned 100,000 shillings, my next job should be paying me 150,000 shillings. I'm sorry, life has changed. Now you're looking at, if my A's are 30,000 shillings, what can I do from my home as a home business to earn 30,000 shillings? If another opportunity, part-time role comes and they're giving me 30,000 shillings, you start actually taking it, yeah? And I want to have another conversation here to us as consumers. COVID has made us realize we are all connected. So as you go out and you're making decisions in the supermarket, we are all connected. I think this has given me such a heightened awareness of the relationship between us as individuals and the economy. When you go to a supermarket and you look at toothpicks, one from China and one from Kenya, and you buy the Chinese toothpick, you are supporting the Chinese economy. But when you go and choose to buy the Kenyan toothpick, you are supporting the Kenyan economy, which in a roundabout way comes back to you and your source of income and your ability to keep your job. So even us as consumers, let us be, even as we're going and having to spend money, let us start being conscious about, can I buy local? And I think the bank will agree with me here. It's not about you. Yeah, so what you do is not just about you. Raphael has the macroeconomic position on this. It's not just about you. So the collective decisions we are making as consumers are coming back and affecting us. Because if I don't support the Kenyan toothpick maker, he doesn't pay employees. They then don't come to my business. They don't spend it. We are all very, very, very connected. But this slide is the first thing to start asking you. Go and sit as a family and say, given where we are now, what is A, what is B, what is C. Remember, it doesn't mean, even if you have to cut back on things that you love, it's not the situation forever, yeah? This is what we have to do to give ourselves the most time to be able to understand what does this mean, how do we restructure ourselves. So if you can just move to the next slide.
Washeke?
Yeah?
Before we move on to the next slide, a lot of people have been either laid off or have had their salaries reduced. What advice would you have for the people that have been impacted that way? Either they've been laid off or they've had salaries reduced in terms of prioritizing their expenses.
Okay. So first of all, go back to what do you have? And I think Patricia was asking about that. What assets do you have? Yeah. So if you have, so first just go do that balance sheet. Yeah. These are all my assets. So do I have savings in the bank account? Do I have insurance at some point? Do I have pension? Do I have a piece of land? Do I have shares on the stock market? And I think a lot of the time when we work with people have forgotten what they have. Do I have money in the chama? Do I have stocks I bought in an IPO at some place and I forgot about them? What do I have? Yeah. Then understand, if my A is this amount of money, I could have things like money in the circle. Hopefully you have what is some that are liquid. So the first thing is you have to survive. You have to put food on the table. Yeah. Which ones, out of all those things that I have, which ones can I use for a couple of my months so that my essential expenses are covered? This is not the time to spend a lot of money in the salon. This is the time to re-engineer. If you have to homeschool, be honest with yourself and do that. Homeschool if you have to, yeah? So then first say, what do I survive? But as I said before, COVID is not about us stopping there. Then start to ask yourself. And in the book I wrote a book and I talk a lot about non-financial assets that people underestimate so much. Because this time, a lot of people may be finding themselves, I don't have money to do typical investments like go buy land or go buy shares, but hey, I'm a creative. I can write, I can cook. And these are the things people have. I'm very good advising people on this and that. My friends come to me and I seem to be able to help them resolve their problems. I want people to look at what these non-financial assets are. These are your skills. And some of them, it doesn't necessarily mean qualifications, yeah? And start to ask yourself, what is happening out there and what do I do with it? I have a friend who was affected by COVID, but she's always been a great cook. And she realized people are not going to go out a lot, but being home with the kids, sometimes without house help, every so often people will want a home cooked meal. I can do home cooked meals and get it delivered to people. And that is how she's making income. So Gladys, I also think it's a time for us to yes, you might have been the head of marketing for Sub-Saharan Africa somewhere, but you can also cook. Please don't start seeing it as a downgrade, because a lot of people, because of status, they're like, no, but I was head of marketing. How can I now be home delivery meal person? And I think that's where we have a mind block. So figure out your A expenses if you've lost your job, but very quickly start thinking, what do I have? What can I do? And what are the opportunities that I can respond to? Because opportunities are going to look differently, but I think opportunities are there. Yeah. There's someone else I know, kids are at home. They're about to go on holiday. What extracurricular activities, even if it's online, can I help and offer kids? So it's just time for people to really think outside the box.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Washeke.
All right. So let me just wrap up with that last slide of where we are going with the conversation. Yeah.
Yes.
So just so that we know the rat race, what the rat race looked like. And as we have this conversation and as we take our lessons from COVID, this is what we're trying to get out of. This is where we were, guys, whether we even without COVID, we were working harder, we earned more money, we bought more things with that money, which made us keep going and work harder to earn more money, to buy more things to keep going. Yeah. So we were in this cycle that, in my opinion, it had to be broken. So over time, and everybody listening here, have you earned more money over the last 5 years? Are you wealthier? For many of us, Gladys, the answer is no, yeah? Because we work harder, we earn more money, then we buy more things. Our businesses' expenses go up, yeah? So what do we convince ourselves? That we need more money. So work harder, earn money, buy more things, keep going. So if we don't get out of this belief that it is always more money that is going to solve the problem, even if COVID ended today and restarted again a year after, we will find ourselves back having this. Even if I work, even if I'm earning my 30,000 shillings, what am I doing with it? And in Centonomy, we like saying, you've got to start understanding which factory are you building? Because when we're in this rat race, we are building everybody's factory apart from us. We are fueling our cars, so we are always building a factory. As I'm sure I showed up in the morning wearing clothes. That means we are always part of building someone's factory. But the point we always forget is, what about your factory? When you're in this rat race, work harder to earn more money, to build other people's factory all the time. And then when I hit retirement age, I realized I spent 8 to 5 every day for 40 years, but I have nothing to show for it. And that what COVID didn't allow us to do retirement age, it stopped. All of us, it stopped. Even myself, income, business income affected, personal income affected. It stopped, yeah? So it has made us asking, so all that time, what was I doing it for? If I found myself even without an emergency fund, what was I working for? If I found myself without a replace income that can come. So this is where we have to go, no matter what we call it, yeah? Assets, liabilities, net worth, expenses, managing, budget, no matter what we call it, this is where we have to go. We have to move from the cycle of working harder to earn money, to keep buying other people's things, to having assets that give you income that can sustain your expenses. So the biggest thing for me, the biggest lesson for COVID has been cash flow. Yeah. Where does your people who had one source of cash flow, it was affected because they didn't use that cash flow to buy assets. Like, for example, if you had an apartment giving you rent, then at least you can have rent. If you have a chicken business giving you money, you have some sort of income. If you do right on the weekends and get paid 5,000 bob, that's other sources of income. So where we all have to go is understanding that life is not sustainable on one source of income. It is not, your financial freedom is not your employer's responsibility. It is yours. Your employer is experience and a good source of cash flow. If you still have a job, please start using that cash flow to generate other things that can give you cash flow. If you don't, what you've been put in is like a furnace. It's very hot, yeah? But it's hot so that you can get results faster. Start understanding, what do I do to generate cash flow? Because all of us have to move to multiple sources of income, because even as human beings, you are not built to be one-dimensional. You are built to be multi-dimensional. So yes, your job is one, but what else can you do? Your chama is one. Get your chama working properly. This thing of a chama where we just go and sit around to discuss nothing, that's not a chama, that's social business. Then call it what it is, social. We meet for social purposes, yeah? But if your chama started out for investment, get it right, reorganize your chama so that it has a long-term goal and money for you guys. So we really just have to move from that thinking of, oh, that will sort my finances out, I'll get a big deal, and my employer is consistently the worst person in the universe. No, yeah. So let's stop, let's get out, let's use this COVID to get out of the rat race. Let's learn something different. Let's also, in this period, I've learned, please stop having the poverty support group conversation. Yes, it's a bad season. It's hard. Everybody is struggling. But this meeting to see, talk about how the economy is bad, it helps, yeah? So if you are in a poverty support group at the moment, please exit. If you are chair of the poverty support group, please resign from it. And it's time for us to start having that kind of to act forward. The last screen I can tell. Yes, so take questions as they come.
Okay, Washeke, thank you so much for those insights, and definitely very good and practical ways to get out of that race and also to manage our financial, personal financial expenses. So moving on to the bank, and Tyrus, what are we doing to support our clients financially and operationally during this current pandemic?
Gladys, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Patricia, for a very easy and very deputy secretary. I think won it for me. The bank have we recognize that there's a lot of strain and stress. Don't forget is once particularly advance a loan to a customer, the intent is that the customer will grow from that opportunity and the bank will as John mentioned earlier, our group MD, we've restructured over 50 billion in loans and facilities for our customers. For the retail banking sector, combining both consumer banking and business banking, that number is around 15 billion, which is nearly about 20% of our book. So the key message and the core answer here is we're open for support. I think Washeke mentioned it earlier, I think Patricia mentioned it as well, is in looking at your expenses, paying your bank loan is a priority. I quite want to re-emphasize the point. However, it may not be your biggest priority at the moment. You're probably more worried about feeding your family and saving for expenses like medical expenses should they come. So we are supporting customers with loan repayments, either delaying both principal or interest sometimes. For periods of 3 months, 6 months, even 12 months. We, of course, will look at every case individually. We want to have a conversation with you to see that there is an impact because we will advise a customer that is just rescheduling it because there's an opportunity to, that perhaps that's not the best thing to do. It does cost money, as we have said. So the bank has been very open to support. We continue to be open to support. About a month and a half ago, we went into a big exercise of speaking to our customers just to say, hello, how are you doing? Is there something we can be helping? And some of the reactions we got were actually very positive. And the intent of that was also to encourage customers to understand the process. So we are supporting, we are open for support, and I do welcome anybody who feels some stress financially, whether it's on their loan or even their credit card, to come to our relationship managers or any of our branches, and we will have a conversation that will offer them the support.
Okay, thank you, Tyrus. The question people are also asking is, are banks still lending? And if they are, how can clients access that support if and when they need it? Are we still lending?
Yes, absolutely. I think, and that I think is a great question, because the other conversation that a lot of people are now shifting to is the reality that COVID is not going to disappear, when, and pursuant to that is then what are the opportunities that are open for me under this environment? There are some clear segments that I think are benefiting. People in agriculture and producing food. People still have to eat. People who are retailing, supermarkets, pharmaceuticals, some people who are in manufacturing that are supporting the economy. A lot of customers in the infrastructure development space. So we are supporting customers who have clear opportunities either are not impacted by COVID or that are opening up because of COVID. So yes, we are lending. Of course, cautiously, because we do want to make responsible decisions, both in terms of protecting the bank and its shareholders, but also protecting the customer and their financial security. So we are probably going to be less supportive to a customer with a very good business today who now wants to build a new block of flats. Maybe that's not the best use of your free cash flows at the moment. So we will advise and have a good discussion around perhaps it's better to support you to grow the business that is already thriving under this environment rather than some speculative. I think it was Patricia who said that resist the temptation to buy what appears to be cheap. Because what that does is utilize free cash flows. So short answer is yes, we are lending selectively to the sectors that are less impacted by the COVID and the economic impact of COVID. But every case is so whatever your opportunity, whatever your idea, just come to us. Let's have a conversation. We will work out a solution that
okay,
works.
Thank you. A lot of clients may continue to face financial distress, even past COVID, and even and before the economy fully recovers. How is the bank prepared to support these needs?
Yeah, post-COVID, and it's a good question as well. I've mentioned just a few moments ago that perhaps it will be more of living under COVID rather than necessarily when COVID disappears. We've seen projections that perhaps a vaccine will not be available until maybe at the earliest, quarter one next year. Some people are even more pessimistic about that. However, so the reality is that, yes, we may give you a grace period. And I've seen some questions about whether we've given grace periods for customers. Yes, we have given grace periods. If you have a facility you wish a grace period for, let's have a conversation. I've already said that. But you still have to pay. And I think it was one of the speakers earlier mentioned, I believe it was Patricia, that you will still have to pay the bank. You still want to protect your credit history. So for some customers, we have already extended the first moratorium that we gave. We gave a grace period of 3 months because, 3-4 months ago, we all thought this thing's going to come and go very quickly. We're now realizing it's probably going to be around for longer. So if you need a further grace period, let's have a conversation. But we also want to have a conversation with you, and we will be supportive. How are you going to start paying? And for some customers, that might actually need some more money that needs to help them revive their business. There's one particular business customer that we're having a conversation. They had to shut their shops. They moved online, and they've now realized actually the online opportunity is actually helping me sell actually a lot more. And the conversation is that, can you help me grow that part of my business to scale it up a lot more? Because I'm even selling products even out of the country now. And so we are actually giving more money to the customer when he's not even paying the loan that he's got, because there seems to be a plan. So the most important thing here is, let's discuss your plan with the bank. Our primary interest is to see you survive financially and your financial health, and to grow your business and to grow your employment. Some people will come and say, I've found a new job, or I've decided I'm not going to do a new job, and I think I have an opportunity here. We will be supportive to those conversations, because there will come a time when you still have to pay that loan. And it is in our interest that you do. It is in your interest that you do. And when common interests come together, I think good conversations happen, and we're very open to have those conversations.
That's great, Tyrus. And just picking up on what you said about a business customer moving online, what are some of the key customer behavior changes you're seeing during this time? And how has the bank adapted to these changes? I know, there are fewer customers wanting to go to the branch, for instance. Could you just give us some insights on how consumer behavior has changed for the bank customers?
Yeah, it's been remarkable. In my view, I think the COVID environment has probably where we were going to go 10 years, maybe 5 years, 10 years from now in adoption of new ways of doing business. So we are seeing a significant increase on people using their cards for making payments. We are seeing a significant drop of ATM transactions, probably almost nearly 50% compared to this time last year, because people are using cash less. We are seeing a significant increase in mobile and money payments, including PesaLink. And this is very good for us because we've all talked very, very often about the impact of digital and the opportunity for both individuals to add convenience to the way they interact with their money, and business people in the way they receive payment. When you take cash out of commerce, you lower costs for everybody in the value chain, and that means more money, left for you. So we've seen a significant increase in cash. Some recovery might happen, but I suspect that a lot of business people that have gotten used to not going to the bank, depositing cash, will probably continue preferring that mode. And our IT platforms and our technology platforms is one that we continue to invest in, to add convenience, to add more services so that we make it easier for individuals and businesses to manage their money.
All right. Thank you, Tyrus. And we'll come back to that discussion during the Q&As based on some of the questions that we are seeing coming through.
Thank you.
I'll move on to Kathure Nyamu, our CEO, NCBA Investment Bank. Kathure, during this time, there has been, impact, both negative and positive. So we have a set of customers who've been negatively impacted in terms of their financial distress. Then investment options are currently available to customers, other than the normal savings.
Thank you, Gladys, and thank you, Asheke and Patricia, for setting the scene for this conversation. And I've seen some of the questions that are also coming through. What alternatives exist? Universe of investment products to consider, some of which Patricia alluded to. We have the unit trusts. These are the collective investment schemes that are regulated by the Capital Markets Authority. It can take the shape of a money market fund, which is a fixed income fund. It can take the shape of an equity fund. And even for the money market fund, it can take a Kenya shilling angle to it, or it can be denominated in foreign currency. So, for instance, at NCB Investment Bank, we have both Kenya shillings and USD investments, and an equity fund. I've seen questions about shares. Now, that's an interesting one, especially because of what we've seen in the market. The market is down significantly. And some of the questions that are coming through from our listeners, our participants, is, can we take opportunity? Can we take advantage of what is happening today? So on the face of it, yes, it's a good time to get in, but let's be careful about the objective of buying, and let's be careful about the length of time you hold those investments, so that you then realize funds. We have derivatives with sophisticated, and these are assets that as a derivative that derives its value from shares, and we have those offered on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. You have commodities, perhaps starting to look at exchange traded funds whose underlying value is from the gold, is something for you to consider. There's fixed income securities on the unit trust fund, and these speak to government securities. You've heard about the treasury bills, the treasury bonds. You've heard about commercial paper, which is debt offered by private companies to fund their short-term working capital, usually an alternative to overdrafts that are offered by banks. You've heard about corporate bonds. This is, again, fixed income instruments that are used by companies to mobilize slightly longer term funding these are investments that you can actually invest in, buy pieces of as an individual. And then finally, and by no means least, is offshore investments for those of us looking for diversification from a currency perspective. Because again, as Raphael alluded to earlier, is that, you know, the currencies are moving and they're all being shaped by what we are seeing in the economy. And so certainly some currencies may depreciate relative to others or weaken, as the language we normally use. They may weaken or strengthen. And so as an investor, you may want to look at different investments denominated in different currencies so that you can diversify the risks that you're holding in your investments. So in a nutshell, that's the product. However, there's also an interesting angle to this, and Patricia actually alluded to this when she talked about, you know, talking to an investment advisor. And this speaks to the services that are available to you as our customers. And so if you look at it, you can access portfolio management. And this is really professional portfolio management, where you contract a portfolio manager to literally manage investment decisions around your portfolio within agreed benchmarks. So for instance, it may be you're talking about, I'd like a minimum return of 10%, interactive discussion and iteration. You can decide on the mix of assets that then speak or can realize that return. There's investment advisory, where this is for the more slightly more savvy investors who understand the entire universe of investments. And they actually talk to a portfolio manager, but they make all the investment decisions on their own. And then finally, there's simply execution. It's a service on its own, where you come to us or to your financial advisors or your stockbrokers or investment bank, and you tell them, look, I would like to buy XYZ. I want to buy a treasury bond. I want to buy shares. Could you execute that for me? So those are the services that also exist for you that would be available. And certainly at NCB Investment Bank, would be willing and very happy to talk to you about these options.
Thank you, Kature. And to our viewers, at least you can see clearly that we are able to support investment side and also from the loan restructuring side. There are lots of questions that are coming through. So I'd like us to just go into the Q&A session so that we can be able to address some of these the questions that are coming through the various channels. So I'll just go through the questions, and then the panelists and the other participants can be able to field them. So I'll start with a question for Patricia. Patricia, please give us your good advice on pension savings and investment. So Patricia, there's a request to give advice on pension savings and investment.
Okay, certainly you must save for pension. I think there's a lady, Sarah Nungari has also asked on the group about being 45 and having no plan for retirement. You will definitely retire. So the sooner you start that discussion, the better. Actuaries recommend that you save up to 20% of your money for your pension. Now, I know that sounds like a large, tall order times. My advice is start setting aside some money, no matter how little. There are enough facilities and enough service providers giving individual personal pension plans for those who are self-employed, which allows you to move your money or to put whatever you can set aside at that point. Now, the most important part to remember is your pension savings are really for your old age. If you're 45, you're not old. So if you're still able to go out and work, and I agree with what Washeka said, work doesn't mean formal in an office seated. The charts from Raphael were quite telling around how many of us are not formally employed. So even you who is in business, even I today should be able to put aside, even if it's 2,000 shillings on a regular basis into a pension fund with a view to access it at retirement and allow it to compound over time. Would I tell you to invest it yourself? Please take your pension money advisor. Next slide, please.
Okay, Patricia, the next question is debt management. And the question is from, how does one clear debt? Several, all at the same time. I think alluding to debt consolidation.
Okay.
First of all, I think the mistake is trying to do all at the same time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I think the first mistake is trying to do it all at the same time. Yeah. And I think when people are in debt, they have that, they do have that time, because let's say you're servicing all debts. That means every month an amount is coming out on one debt. Once you clear one, that means whatever repayment you are doing on that debt can now be used for the next one and the next one and the next one. And by that, in that way, you will actually clear your debts faster than trying to do all of them at the same time. So actually choose the one that will take you the shortest period and work on that one first, because also with debt repayment, what happens if you choose the long one, you get tired, you get discouraged. And you know, we're human beings. So with money, you're always dealing with the practical, but as well as the human side of it. So choose the one that will take you the shortest time. Because when you do it, you kind of feel, I've achieved one goal. Then whatever the repayment was, maybe you were doing 10,000 on that, yeah? Join it with whatever you are paying and then pay the second one, finish that one, and then the third one, and then whatever. And whilst you're on a debt repayment plan, do not take any more debt. So what all your access to debts, credit cards, and whatever it is that makes you take debt. Yeah. So one at a time is how you get out of debt. Gladys, can I mix that answer with something somebody has asked?
So there's another question for
debt.
Sorry, Washeka.
I was just going to mix my answer with someone who asked about whether she should pay her debt off with her SACCO savings.
Go ahead,
yeah?
go ahead.
And I just want to say at this point, because she doesn't have a job, because this point is because she doesn't have really about survival, so she cannot take all her savings, pay off her car loan, and then cannot put food on the table. So I just advise, keep making the payments if you can, until you get another source of income, and sell off the car to pay off the car loan. So sometimes those are the decisions we have to make,
Okay. Question for Patricia from Jermaine Nyambura, asking, Patricia, you talked about this being the wrong time to start a new hustle. Does that mean it is also the wrong time to accelerate starting a hustle that was already in the making, especially one that thrives on the online economy?
Thanks, Jermaine. I like the question, the word accelerate, because for me, the term accelerate means, should you put in more capital? If a hustle was already, if your business was already existing before Corona, hopefully it had already made money itself. My view would be reinvest that money. Would I be going back to my personal money now today to reinvest in revenue stream? Highly unlikely, because I can't tell the duration that this Corona position will take. So allow your business to grow slowly. I think one of the biggest challenges in a crisis situation is the fear and the need to very quickly do things. You have enough time. If you're like me and planning to live until 100, you have really a lot of time. So my advice would be, no, I don't think it's necessary to put in more money in your market. Don't stock up on things that you do not need at this time.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Next question is for Asheke. They earn a variable income. And then also there's another question around what percentage of your savings should it be based on growth or net?
So let me take the first one. What should you save? How do you save automatically if you're earning a variable income? Yeah, if you're earning a variable income, sometimes it's hard to say, yes, I can save 20,000 shillings per month or saving 30,000 shillings per month. The discipline though that you have to have is when that income comes in, even before you start spending it, you should actually save it. Yeah. So it's not a matter of saving doesn't have to be, I know with formal employment, we've been talking employed, you'll get money sometimes per week, or there will be 2 months you don't get money, then you get money 3 months later. So it's not about savings per month, it's about when them comes in, can I do your budgets very quickly and then save? Yeah. And when you're saving, please don't let it be about, let me make all my expenses very comfortable and then save. If you go back to the ABC, do your A's first, figure out then what you will save, and then the rest should be, B and C should be on what is left over. What percentage of your income should you put into savings? Should it be based on gross or net? This is how to think about it. Yeah, it's not even based on gross or net. What does your lifestyle? If your lifestyle, if I use Patricia's example when she's been talking about retirement, for long-term savings, you're thinking about if I earn 100,000 shillings now, when I retire, and please note these days we don't think about retirement as in you will time you have will be different. Yeah, what you're working towards to in that investment plan is, can I invest enough so that I have 100,000 shillings coming in per month? From very rough calculations, it should be about 30% of what you spend per month. So if you earn 100,000 shillings and spend 100,000 shillings, on a very, very rough calculation, it should be on 30% per month. But remember, it depends on what does your lifestyle look like? What do your goals actually look like? So that's just a rough estimate, but people really, you need to go back and calculate. What do I actually want to achieve with these savings? Do I need to educate my child, take them to college at some point? What will it cost? What will be my lifestyle at retirement? What will that cost? And then you'll start getting an estimate. I know today people have had 30% and want to start screaming. But remember this, we're talking about today. If you can start with 10%, start with 10%. Because as life goes on, over time, your income will also start increasing. So as it increases, what you know earlier, that automatically expenses increase as my income increases. So what you may start with 5% or 10%, but as your income starts increasing, be conscious of saving more of that income. Yeah.
Okay, so Washeke, there's also another question that is related to emergency funds. And this is from Bella Bell Pinky.
Yes.
So, they're asking that they had an emergency fund for 3 months.
Yes.
I think the emergency fund was worth 3 months. And I think they're using it, although they have an investment account. So they're wondering whether to continue using the funds that they put aside for emergency, or use the money that is in the investment account.
Because the original purpose for the investment account were, probably for longer term. Yeah. I would say the emergency fund is set up for a time like this. This is what we call, this is the emergency situation, where it is money that I can survive on. Apart from an emergency like medical or something breaks down, emergency fund is also able to replace your income for a certain amount of time. While they are in use of the emergency fund, they should just not be sitting pretty and waiting to dip into the investment account. They should start figuring out, what do we have to do? If the fund gets completely depleted, yes, they will have to dip into the investment account. But the problem with dipping into the investment account now is that you start getting too comfortable and you don't put yourself under pressure to start figuring out ways of generating income. I know we are scared of struggle and we're scared of challenges, but I want to tell you, just someone from who has over time in my journey experienced many of them, struggle sometimes can be a very good thing. Yeah. Because when your back is against the wall, your mind starts to think differently, and things that you didn't even have thought of, you will start doing. So don't dip into the investment account, because the investment account will probably even take them for another year or even 2 years where they can sit doing nothing. But if they put themselves under pressure, they will start looking at things. Remember, your emergency fund account is also, don't be comfortable. Keep your expenses to an absolute minimum if you're already in the emergency fund account. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ashake. The next question is for Kature. So this is a government employee, and they have 1 million to invest. So they're saying they've opened them up to other possibilities. So what investment option would you give to them?
Thank you very much for that question. As especially the fixed income investments, and this is speaking to the lessons drawn from what Washeke and Patricia have talked about today. Liquidity is going to be very key as we go into the future, especially with all this uncertainty. And so please begin looking at investments that at least, one, preserve your capital. And that means that you're not going to, shares are great to buy right now, but you have to take a very long-term view. In fact, we've revised that from a horizon of 3 years to about 5 years to write this specific cycle. And this speaks to the economy and how that pans out. So we may see the prices even going down further. And so what that means is that your investment is going to be impacted negatively. So for this person who has that 1 million shillings, please consider fixed income investments. There's a wide array to choose from. There's the unit trust funds, there's the deposits, the bank deposits, there's savings, there's the government treasury bills and treasury bonds. And certainly at NCBA Investment Bank, would be very happy to have that conversation with you about this. And Gladys, let me just stretch this to another question that has been asked around restructuring our portfolios. As investors, we have these investments that we are holding. Some of us are holding what we call illiquid investments. And Patricia spoke to that earlier. And so the question to us as investors is, can we restructure these portfolios so that we increase liquidity, which is what Washeke is speaking about. Liquidity means you have cash or assets that can be converted into cash to meet either your day-to-day needs or to take care of that rainy day. I mean, there's health to think about. There's the loss of a job. There's pay cuts because of this situation. So there's an opportunity for you to consider diversifying your investments as well, to avoid what we call asset over-concentration. If you're heavily concentrated, for you to rejig that portfolio so that you have a little bit more of fixed income. Fixed income means you have a regular income coming through in the form either of interest or coupon, as we use in our language. And so please, this is an opportunity for you to talk to your personal financial advisors, to talk about restructuring your portfolios. And we are very happy to even engage you on your risk assessment, your risk profile assessment. And this then speaks to what is changing in your personal environment. It could be your income has changed, your future goals have changed because, jobs are gone, hustles are affected. It could be our career prospects don't look as rosy. It can be even the market conditions, which are currently not very rosy. So have those conversations and certainly reach out to us. And to the person who was asking about pension, I'm very happy to say that those options exist even at NCBA Investment Bank. We have individual pension plans. So, and you can put away as little as 2,000 shillings. to start saving for your retirement. And this is all part of your investment planning. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Katuri, for that answer. The next question is for Tyrus, and it's from Eric Muduri. Eric is asking, I have a real estate project which I was to start this year to build 1-bedroom units for rentals and sales. Is this a good time to start the project or wait until 2021?
Okay, I think a very interesting question, and thank you for the questioner. Yes and no, which may not be helpful to there. With real estate investments, with whatever the source of that cash flow is, it all depends. With real estate, we say the three most important things are location, location, and location, right? So if you're targeting high-end real estate, 1-bedroom apartments, because that's also possible, maybe you might want to think about what impact the people who would be your offtake are having on their end. So through out of that investment, because I think it was Washeke who said cash flow is the most important thing to defend during this environment, right? So don't take a lot of cash that you have, lock it up in an investment that then is going to remain empty for 9 months because you cannot get people to take space there. We're generally advising caution around the real estate. There is oversupply in some segments of that sector. So depending on the location, depending on whether you believe that there will be sufficient occupancy to generate the cash flows that will allow you to pay back that investment. And it doesn't have to be that you borrowed the money to build. You've got to replenish whatever pocket that capital that you're deploying in that project came from. That's the most important thing. So short answer is yes and no. It would depend on a lot of the what goes into the constructing of that opportunity, but don't be scared. I think it's Albert Einstein that once said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunities. I think some other people say don't waste a good crisis. I think Raphael in one of his earlier presentations, I think in the economic webinar update, he said that. So absolutely, there are opportunities available during this time. And if you're persuaded that whatever uncertainty there is, it's a great time to invest. And I think Kathure made that point as well earlier. Yeah.
All right, Teras, thank you for that response. The next question is anonymous, however. They're saying, thanks for the webinar today. My question is, if as an SME or a business customer, I'd like to apply for a facility during this time that we're in, what interest will the facility be subject to? And will there be any general waivers taking into account the difficult situation we are facing now? So, Tyrus.
A general waiver, probably not. However, we assess every case on its merit, and in fact, it's the correct way to look at that. Any borrowing is that how will I service it at? And when you do your sensitivity analysis of if the interest is X, Y, or Z, can the purpose for which I'm borrowing stand on itself? Bankers, we look at insurance and security to insurance or interest rate towards the end. It's not the primary reason that should drive your decision to borrow. I think it should be led by, do I have a bankable idea? Am I convinced that I'm addressing an opportunity that I can uniquely create value from? How much of my own money am I willing to put in? How much then do I need to borrow? Ultimately, how do I pay myself back? And how do I pay whoever I borrow from back? You'll find that most businesses will struggle, not because the interest rate was high, but because the business idea wasn't constructed on solid ground, so to speak. So I think lead first with what is the reason you want to do that business? What is the reason you want to borrow? And then make the borrowing decision very sensibly, which actually, brings me to make another point, and particularly to the individuals who are part of the audience. And I think there was a comment made earlier in the opening comments that be careful about debt, particularly debt for consumption, right? It has become very easy to access credit today. You download an app and you can pretty much get a limit of 10,000, 20,000 shillings. And a lot of people are struggling and damaging their credit history because they are taking opportunistic lending opportunities just because you can, So tread carefully into any conversation that leads to the interest rate is important, but should be among your once the idea for which you want to borrow.
And it comes from a gentleman called Hugo Francis. So he's asking, does the bank have a facility that caters for schools, which according to recent reports may not resume? Is it a good idea to convert our school buses into matatus for the duration of this crisis?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, one that I think that we've always been interested in. I think for obvious reasons we've been very we are now advising caution around that sector. We've seen a lot of development towards the self-learning online portals. School buses, we've got a very strong asset finance franchise within the NCBA group. We've supported a lot of clients in the past. Those that are currently not being able to from a restructuring of their loans and obligations, as I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks. As to how you use your spare capacity today, I mean, there's a lot of ideas. I've even had the one about converting matatus into ambulances because maybe they're going to be needed. As I said earlier, every crisis offers opportunities, but there will be a day that your school will reopen. There will be a time that you're going to need that school bus. So don't let the asset go to waste. I think it was Washeke who said, I think Patricia actually, is your car an asset? Now if you can convert your car that is in parking because you're working from home, maybe into an Uber, then it becomes an asset because now it is generating some cash flow. Okay. So if your school bus is a spare capacity that is a liability today, and you've got a business idea that enables you to generate some new cash, perhaps to help you pay its loan or pay your driver or at least pay for its maintenance, then that might be a good thing to do. But don't undermine the foundations upon which you are successful in the first place. Your school, for your school to have grown to have a school bus or one or two or three school buses means you had a good business going. Some things will change for sure. Perhaps the way you will deliver education, going forward, but don't undermine that. I think let's all have the confidence and the conviction that when the restrictions ease and when we are now able to go back to business, I will still need to be strong to win in what is still going to be a very competitive sector, whatever sector it is. So yes, you can, if that will help with some temporary relief, or particularly to generate cash flows. But I would advise against, severely disrupting yourself and undermining your own capability to get back into business when you're able to.
All right. Thank you, Tyrus. Then Caroline Karaoke is asking, would you advise someone to take a mortgage loan during this period?
I want to try and not say yes and no again, because I think I'm saying yes and no too many times. If your circumstances are that you feel secure, that your income is protected, you perhaps work in a sector that has not had much of an impact, then it's probably a good idea to do that. If you're looking at a mortgage so that then you can rent it to other people, you might want to think about whether that's the best use of your cash at the moment. Remember that for every mortgage, we will ask you to put some of your own cash and equity as part of the lending transaction, right? It might be 10%, 20%. That means for a mortgage of 10 million shillings, you've got to find your own 1 or 2 million shillings. So the real question here is, if you do have the 1 or 2 million shillings, is this the best time necessarily to buy? If you think you can afford and be able to support it, yes, but also be careful about necessarily just rushing into it. That mortgage is probably still going to be, that house under sale is probably still going to be available, 3 months from now, 6 months from now. We forget how much has changed in the last 6 months. 6 months ago, there was no COVID. It was something happening in some foreign country, and we somehow didn't quite internalize that it was going to come on our shows and have the disruptive impact that it has had. So I would advise caution. You probably will not lose much by waiting another 3 or 6 months for the situation to clarify itself a little bit more. And then perhaps you will now be able to make a more informed situation, particularly about where the state of recovery is and the impact of the economy on yourself and on that sector. There are people who are expecting real estate prices to drop. There are people who think that maybe they will not drop. So I would advise caution is my simple answer. However, if you feel confident that your personal circumstances enable you to support that decision, then I think it would be a good one. And it's a type of customer that then we would support, having reviewed all those factors when you make your application.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Taras. The last question to you is NCBA looking at reducing interest rates for loans and mortgages for current clients? Prolonging the loan period means paying more in the long run. This is from Judy Ndekwa.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great question and a great point to be conscious of. That the fact that we've delayed payments doesn't necessarily mean it actually costs you more because you've borrowed it for longer. As to whether we will reduce interest rates, we benchmark against what trends, and Raphael in his earlier comments commented that in the short run there might be, with the excess liquidity we are seeing, there might be a trend downwards of interest rates. But he also mentioned with the increase of government borrowing, we might see an uptick in the cost of money. That will have an impact on how we price our own lending. The other aspects that go into lending is the risk, both of the customer and of the sector or purpose for which they want to borrow. So there is a lot that goes into, sort of the pot that then produces an interest rate. But NCBA is committed to pass on any benefits that accrue from a drop in interest rates in the market. But equally, if those go up, then we will pass on that. So there is no intent today that we will offer lower rates of lending. We will follow the market as we've always done, and that is our commitment to our customers.
Okay, well, thank you, Taras, for that comment. Washeke, there's a lot of requests coming through for you to talk about your book.
Oh, okay.
So if you could just give some.
All right. Okay, so this is the book. It's called Making Sense, and it's a book I wrote. I launched it last year, and it's really a storybook about personal finance. So what it does, it goes through my story and the story of about 3 other people and their journeys of personal finance. So we have people like, I have a gentleman there called Douglas who tells us all the way his lifestyle was. And just by that example, I was showing you the ABC, how he turned all that into being able to do investments to over 10 million shillings. And he talks about even how he used his non-financial assets. And because I have him and many others, including myself, as a study of even when you don't have money, when you put your personal skills on the table and start building them, what you could actually do with them. Goes to the story of Faith, who's in a marriage, how they've dealt with money, how they had to get out of debt, realizing that their home was not working for them and how to move out. And a young man called Dishon, who started making bracelets in university and ended up being a farmer in Kilifi. So it's really just takes you through the story of personal finance, where you're gonna able to see yourself through other people. It's quite a quick read, and it has a lot of workbooks at the end. So it's available in a couple of bookshops. There was a number on screen, you saw it. It's 0715087777 that you can actually call to get the book. And even just go to centonomy.com and you can actually order the book. Sales are there, and you can get the book. And so it's a great book, especially this time you have some time working through your personal finances. Yeah. And I just want to say, even one thing I've written in the book is money is a tool and a resource for the life that you want. And I think especially at this time, it's important we all remember that, but it is not the life. So what we have to learn to approach money with is use it as a tool, use it as a resource. It's about you limited. You are the business, yeah? And money comes in to help you achieve a purpose. So how you spend, where you invest, the C's you choose to have, when you choose to have it, should all be very value-based and driven on getting you to where you want to go. Please, let's not identify ourselves with money. You may have been earning a lot of money, now you're not earning any money. It doesn't mean that you are any less of a person, yeah? So you could be earning a lot of money. It also doesn't mean you are superior to others. So just let's start looking at money in a more holistic way and understanding, how do I use this tool? But it is a tool. It is not your identity and it is not your life. Yeah.
All right. Washeke, thank you so much for giving us your book into the closing remarks. So Patricia, the question is from Khalil Mate. And it is, in the post-COVID-19 economy, would you advise people to retool with new skills to enable them to be more diverse? Should their specialist job or skill not be needed in the future?
Okay.
So would you advise for reskilling and retooling?
First, I think it's safe to say that there's no skill that you have that will be wasted. I think what Washeke was saying is, within your arsenal, other than your professional career, you have other skills. So I think if limiting yourself to, if I use myself as the example, limited myself to my degree is in actuarial science, I would never be doing what I'm doing today. So your ability to be flexible and add on skills in experience is something you need to keep increasing into your arsenal. And be open to the idea of working in a field. I think it's very important not to limit where you can work. So for example, today, if someone gave me a job within agriculture, work with clients within agriculture, I'd never thought, for example, I'd deal with potato farming. But within a month of working with a client in agriculture, I learned about potato farming. Mm-hmm. So you need to open to the idea. And I think these crises really allow that opportunity for you to explore what else you can do with yourself. So I would say it's not necessarily don't stop being a professional, but be open to the idea to explore other areas and enjoy the journey. You're here for a while. So thanks for that.
I think those are the questions that we were able to take within this time, but to our viewers, continue sending those questions. We'll be able to respond to them through our social media platforms so that it would allow us to at least get some closing remarks from our panelists. Patricia,
so my closing remarks
give us
is,
some
as you've seen,
remarks.
My COVID story is still unfolding. I've really enjoyed this. The minute I went through the panic and the anxiety to the point of, this is what the reality is. Acceptance is really important. And I like Washeke's words. Money is just one aspect of it. Your social environment, your spiritual environment, and how you relate. What has kept me most sustain in this period of time is the work we do with the slum children here in Embu. Just that process of giving and going out of my way has kept me stopping to worry about being in the house. Second thing, money will come. If you keep doing, then do the next thing that you need to do. Money will follow, but don't make it the only thing that you're pursuing in life. I think those would be really my closing remarks, and a big thank you to the NCBA team for hosting us and for the team, for everyone who's participated today. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Kathure, closing remarks?
This has been a very insightful session. Thank you very much to my co-panelists. My remarks would be around, look at the alternative investments that exist, especially those that preserve your liquidity during this time. Have open and honest conversations about restructuring your portfolios. Save for your retirement. As Patricia has said, life is not stopping. We are still living. Life is for the living. And finally, don't panic. Don't panic sell. Just rethink your portfolios and let's see what we can do. Talk to your personal financial advisors. Please reach out to us at NCB Investment Bank at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathure. Tyrus, your closing remarks?
Thank you. And firstly, to the panelists for accepting our invitation. I think it's been a very engaging conversation. So two things. One, we are open to support anybody who needs help with reorganizing their finances. We're open for business, for those with opportunities that they need support from their financier. And one of my favorite things that with our brand positioning, go for it, is a couple of, the message around, is today going to be, are you still going to be talking about one day, or is today going to be day one? So it's never too late to get better organized financially. And a bank like NCBA, with all our capabilities, is there to help. And you're very welcome to NCBA. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyrus. Washeke, your closing remarks, please.
I think one of the stories that has been keeping me really going in this season, when we all have to think differently, is David and Goliath. And I just kept stand that David beat Goliath. That seemed like this very big giant with very different tools. He was with the slingshot, and it was his power to do that, and he was very light. And to me, I just think this is the time to start looking at ourselves differently. Before, we always thought you have to have a lot of money, you have to have all these networks, you have to have all these qualifications to do something big or do something. But I think we're all being told ourselves differently. What are the things we can do, and past experiences, something that you liked doing as a child that got lost along the way, and maybe this is the time to start picking them up, because you will be surprised what you can actually do when you start thinking. When it comes to money, I want to remember COVID, the money did not get corona. There was no big bonfire that was lit and money disappeared. Yeah? What we're now trying to figure out is, how do we get that money moving again? And it's gonna move in a different way. So this is why it's time for us to think about new things to do. Yeah, when we start saying things like, someone was giving the example of schools, maybe schools, there'll be a change in business models and a huge move towards online learning. Teach is something that you can do. Wealth application of resources, all resources, not just 10,000, 30,000. But some of
supporting their customer to navigate through and much stronger at the end. So much. I'd like now to hand over to Rosalind.
Thank you so much to all of you. I want to close with just a few remarks. Is the president of the European Banking Federation. We have a formidable opportunity to demonstrate that responsible banking can be much more than a slogan. We can make it a reality. A bank now supports that is much needed time.